Okay, so we have four topics to cover today, mainly because they're all conversations we've had this week. And the first one came from a conversation, John, that we had on Tuesday, and how every operator compress execution, the ones that are running on AI, the ones who are collapsed handoffs, they're getting all three. Not because they have more money and not because they have more people, but because the architecture of the work has changed. Now, John, you're the one who pointed this out and how the decision triangle is no longer a thing. Can you share your thoughts on why you think that trade-off is no longer reality?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting moment, isn't it? Isn't it not? Like, I think what AI is really helping us all understand is that, you can move quickly, you can get more work done, and the quality is amazing. So I think it's really kind of bringing a lot of focus on to how work gets done, and I think we're all just rethinking, that old narrative that you have to pick, you have to pick two. Honestly, I don't know where that came from, but it's all in our, it's all in our psyche from, the last, dozen or so years of SaaS. So I think we're now at a moment where you can have the ability and the flexibility and the empowerment to get more work done, to improve the quality, and to yeah, move faster. So. I think that's the moment that we're in. I think it's still like the first inning of this transformation with AI and how work is changing. And I think we're working with customers who are rethinking how they get work done. We're rethinking how we get work done internally. And I think all roads lead to, kind of those three, value props are all coming to to be highly available to everyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's exciting. I think the early winners are the folks who can rewire themselves to think in that totally different way, where this like scarcity problem or this false choice we've had in the past, it's gone. And so now it's like, well, what would you test if everything was easy? And it is really hard to untrain yourself from however many years in industry we've all had. For me, it's a substantial number. And to retrain myself and think like, oh, wait, no, that's all this development, creating new product, that's the easy bit. So what if you create five different versions of a thing and you look at it less as somebody who's got to be, chipping away at that coal face to create one version and somebody who can effortlessly create five and then be more of an editor. Like which of these fives really sings and what's going to work for one customer versus another. That is so insanely wrong to any way of like doing business we would have thought of 10 years ago. But now it's that personalized interface for our SaaS customers, that personalized interface for that SaaS customers' shoppers, for example. Yeah, they could say all the stuff that everybody sort of wanted to do for the last 20 years in terms of real personalization of customer journeys, and nobody really did because it was just too expensive. And so you'd be like, oh, tweak a color here or a little bit of text there. It's not like, guys, give them a completely different PDP. Go run 10 different PDPs every day just for giggles for this different audience. You never would have dreamt of doing that. And still today, not a whole lot of folks are dreaming of doing that, but it's that level of hyper personalization and customization at scale that's just been unlocked. And if you're still thinking, quarter long roadmaps to roll out one new digital asset, like it's real hard to capture just what kind of power you have right now.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about that too, Ryan, is it kind of the handoff tax that used to, be part of how work got done. You just think about what it looked like even just 3 years ago. If we were building product, you had, so many different, handoffs and so many different people involved in that from, product management to working with customers on requirements to, working with the product team to developing that to QA to the launch teams. And so as you apply that now, what's really evaporating in kind of this structural change is that you don't need as many handoffs. You don't need as many, kind of silos along the way. So I think Alex, that's kind of, that's really what's, I think changing here is that just, that kind of that structural change of how things are getting done. It's just really removing, the need for all of this, all of these silos and all of this handoff. Not just between people, but also between systems, right? Dozens and dozens of applications doing some silo task no longer makes sense.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you can, as a person with a vision, you can now completely vertically integrate your supply chain, to put it in economic terms. You can own that entire vision from idea to shipping live product, no matter who your customer is. And it's you directing the effort of a whole bunch of different systems that feel like one, because it's like your tool chain that you're managing. If you're doing it right, and if you've built the right platform for the work that you're doing. But that's also one of those things that I think for a lot of folks is uncomfortable too, because we've been told that anything you do based on your own effort, like, oh, those are just prototypes or those are just toys. And then eventually you're going to have to like hand it off to the grown-ups or the people who are allowed to do that stuff. And now I think we are surrounding thought leaders, we are surrounding folks who have that vision and giving them the tooling where it's like, no, not only is it okay that this is your idea from inception to production, but that's the only way to make best use of what AI is giving us and what this new system of tools is giving us. I think you nailed it. It's that you now, as a person with a vision, not just you get to own it, but you have to, or you're not going to move as fast as other folks who've realized that.
Yeah, and it's really pushing, I think, a lot of our customers too to really think through more of the strategy and more of the what if and what could we do, and I mean we see it, right? We're helping our customers, run more experiments, helping them move from what used to, they used to be able to do two in a sprint and now they can do 10. And so I think that's it's helping them to really kind of push towards not can we afford to do this or do we have the resources to do this, but what do we want to learn from these experiments and what are the opportunities and that we want to lean into. And so it's really moving a lot of our customers and a lot of the work we do towards that strategy, that strategic thinking, and so going deeper and deeper. So you're exactly right. I think if you have vision and you have an understanding of the business, I think you can bring a lot more value to your organization.
And take bigger risks, take bigger shots, because the kind of stuff that you would have thought of personalizing or testing in the past, you had to think, well, I got one cut at this over the next 3 months because I got to fit this into a roadmap and 10 teams got to do a thing and it's complicated to roll something out. I can't burn that 3 months on something that has a very low likelihood of success. So I'm going to pick something real safe, which is on the flip side, very unlikely to move the needle much. It's just not going to move it down. And so we're going to do these real incremental, boring kind of things because that was life. And now you could take a flyer on completely wacky designs, situational for audiences. You want a totally different, you want five totally different treatments of PDPs for somebody who lands on your page from Perplexity versus Gemini versus traditional Google. Like, go nuts, test those, test them on a small portion of your audience. You get a signal, maybe dial that up, but you don't have to. And we still see this in many of our customers, and I think it's a very natural human inclination, sort of self-select down to the safe choices because it's like, well, I gotta keep my ambition in check because it's hard to do things that are a little bit daring, and I don't want to mess something up. Now it's like, go nuts, mess something up for 1 in 1,000 people, see if you're getting a signal, and then dial it up from there. You could be real daring.
Yeah. And as a marketer, knowing that I have that control, it changes a lot of my thought processes. Going back to previous companies where I've had to come up with the idea, you have to pitch it, you have to kind of get buy-in from other people, at least the ones that are going to be the executing it, they have to understand your vision. And then, you go through the whole pipeline of people have that are all everyone that's involved. It takes too long, so you feel guilty with you if what you've come up with is a hunch or an idea and it falls flat, and then you've just wasted a bunch of people's times. What's really cool that if I have an idea now, I can do it myself in a day and test it, and if it works, then we can expand it.
Yeah.
And I like that because then it's just like, oh, let me just see a thing. And and I think it's been a long time since the people who are calling the shots have had have been able to be that creative in their work that they do because they get to just have that inspiration and just try it,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah, I think that's the most liberating aspect of this. I think I think a dominant theme right now. A lot of folks are scared of AI and, like, it's AI slop and it's generating things that I don't trust. But God, if you're in a creative role and you've always had to dial down your ambitions or just deal with really long time frames that change, I had a vision, probably made sense in the fall. Maybe it doesn't make sense January 1 when we can get it. And now it's like I can immediately realize it. And if I messed it up, it was a day of my time. And what's a couple million tokens between friends? Like it's real easy to test some stuff and see what sticks and own it. And particularly for folks who, because of their nature of the role, could not own delivery and were having to deliver through other teams, so empowering and liberating. I mean, our most prolific developer, product developer at this point, was previously a product manager. And she had to live a life of trying to encourage people like me to take things seriously when it was like, hey, this is a UX issue or this is something that doesn't just work right. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but there's other stuff we're working on. And now she's like, I don't have to wait for you anymore. I don't have to wait for you to realize how wrong you are and what you deliver. They're just going to go bang it out. Like it's so empowering because we can all own everything that's, in our vision. Should I name drop PK by name? You can
I
just work
knew
it out.
exactly who you were
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
about.
The person who's had to spend a decade putting up with me no longer has to. It's incredibly empowering.
Yeah, she has mentioned that a few times that it's been very liberating.
Yeah, get it.
That was
Not having to
actually
work through me. Like, of course that's liberating. I don't have to wait on Ryan as my supply chain.
I put this topic first because I thought it was going to be the shortest one, and I realized that was stupid.
Are we 30 minutes in?
Yeah, that's a wrap.
Yeah.
No, you're stuck here. We're going to move on to the second one. Okay, and this one's really personal because on Monday, Ryan, you said, and I quote, mobile is different from desktop. And I just sat there going, no shit. I've been saying this for years. But the thing is, most CRO teams treat mobile like a smaller desktop. And they run tests on desktop, they see a lift, they push it to mobile, and they just pray. So any wins, any losses just don't translate. The behavioral model is fundamentally different. And almost nobody is like, rebuilt like their testing program around that. So if mobile is like 65% of your traffic and your CRO program is using one playbook for both, it's not really a CRO program. It's a desktop optimization program with a mobile coverage problem. So Ryan, as you're the one who said it, what do you actually see? Can you walk me through what behaviors are completely different on mobile versus desktop, and why teams are just not catching it?
Yeah, I mean, this was such a revelation for me. I'm really glad we captured this notion that mobile is different. And it is funny, we in industry for the last 10 years, everyone has been saying, well, we're mobile first. I've yet to meet a truly mobile first development or design team. I think it's something we all have to say because if you don't say it, you look like an idiot. But we're all developing, working on, testing on primarily. We're on our desktops. Like that's just where we live. And then it's like, all right, well, let's do some hokey little responsive thing that's going to make it mostly work on mobile. And it was always treated as an environment that you need to build and test for. But what I think is really, and this is tied to some of that, what would you test and are you making the best use of the capabilities we have right now? I think historically, folks always tested mobile and desktop at the same time because it was always the same development cycle. So even if you were saying we're mobile first, you're gearing up for an A/B test or a personalization strategy that's going to land on that same Monday that release cycle ends. and you are necessarily tying together the strategy for that test you're going to do, the time frame you're going to run that test. You've got those two different populations. Ideally, you have a dashboard that lets you see them as different audiences. But the way you should be landing them is like, hey, we've got a mobile test coming up, and that's going to test these three theories we have about mobile. That's the only thing we're testing for that device class. Maybe we have a totally different time frame and schedule and idea and set of strategies we're going to be testing for different users on different desktop or narrower or wider devices. But we never see that. That's not the going in position for teams. The going in position for teams is we're going to test both. And even if the design is very, very different and the behavior of that audience is very, very different, I never see a team say, even when we've seen really, really stark differences of, hey, mobile is failing enough, you want to stop that test, but desktop is doing pretty well. On average, it looks like things are okay. But it's that level of like, no, mobile should be treated as this completely different entity. We develop it on a different cycle, even if it's the same teams who are working on the product. Start off with a mobile hypothesis, start off with a desktop hypothesis, run them whenever you're ready to run them. And that's the guidance that we've been providing to teams. And I know it seems crazy to be like, oh, I just woke up and realized mobile's a little bit different or a lot bit different. But it does, I think, come down to what teams feel like they have a capability to deliver. And historically, it was like we do have a release schedule, and that needs to include both device types. And therefore, you're testing them both along the same, there's an A and a B. You're trying to accomplish roughly the same thing. Like maybe we're going to try some new text that's more engaging, or we're going to try something that's a little bit more explanatory. And what we've seen with a lot of folks that specific what is working differently for folks, the more you can collapse vertical space on mobile, no surprise, that helps a ton. We've seen a ton of cases where folks are collapsing vertical space on desktop and mobile, and the results are inverted. So mobile, it works great. Desktop, it works terribly, or vice versa. Now we've eaten up all the mobile space, so everything fun you have to scroll to get. And that's because you're going into it with a hypothesis that or we're changing something related to how much information we put on that PDP. Should be for mobile, we think it makes a ton of sense to collapse this or provide things that are more interactive and more utility up top. For desktop, that might land as noise. We're not even thinking about desktop right now. We're having a mobile conversation, and that's what we're looking to deliver. So that's what we've seen, and that's where we're pushing customers to think, like, look, with this newfound power of being able to do 10 different things at once, do all 10 in one device type, and that's your test. Do 10 over on that other device type, and that's that other test, and never conflate them.
Hmm. Yeah, as someone that used to recommend to customers what they did with their designs when I was on the design services team, they would ask, well, does the same video work for desktop versus mobile? And I'm like, it's kind of, but if you're going to have like a video that's long, you're not going to see it on mobile. People are going to be, pinching their phones trying to see what it is, or they're just going to flat out ignore it, which is the most likely scenario. So even aspect ratio is different. The way that CTAs function is different. Like people can use hotspots and things on desktop, but on mobile, does it still work? Or do people just expect to click on that image and have a different experience? So it's a completely different world. And you're right, as a designer, you are designing everything on a desktop computer. So it's I'm not thinking about mobile. I'm thinking about the design of it, but I'm not physically scrolling in my phone using it whilst I'm building it. So treating them as two separate things is is yeah, what you have to absolutely do to be able to get those engagement results that you're looking for.
Can we coin a law? Can we coin like let's try this because he's on vacation today. Can we coin a softs law, which is that mobile is a very different audience, more different than you think, even if you account for a softs law. So no matter what you think, no matter how hard you try and say like, oh, it's probably a different kind of situation, you're still not isolating it enough. I think he'd be honored to learn that I am surprised that he learned that I made up a law and didn't give it my own name.
Oh, there's so many laws that Asaf has brought to the world, right? So I mean, that would just be one more for his,
Exactly. Yeah.
for his storied list. Yeah, no, on this topic, I would add like what's really this is really the tip of the spear if you think about mobile versus desktop and everything we just discussed, but where you can go deep on the personalization now with with that visitor. Is that visitor on mobile? Is that visitor on desktop? Is that visitor in a particular segment or demographic? What do you want to personalize for that particular, visitor? So not only down to like the device type or even the, the resolution or the screen size, right? Because those are different too. But for each type of customer, how are you personalizing that experience where are they coming from? What is their intent to purchase? What are the products that you want to serve? What are the promotions that you want to serve? So I think that's really what's also opening up here is that you can go super deep with your personalization, and that is where there is revenue opportunity. That's where brands and retailers can really get more out of their ad spend, more out of their traffic to their sites or to their apps or whether it's mobile or desktop. So I think that's really exciting is that it's going well beyond just having two variants, if you will, or three variants. Now you can have almost infinite variants based on how you want to personalize to your different customers. So segment where they are in the buying journey, product, price, promotion. I mean, it's just opening up so many amazing opportunities.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're seeing customers start to explore is thinking about it not just in terms of, well, what does the screen look like? Because I think that is our natural, you're working with sort of static screenshots, mock-ups, like this screen looks like this. Oh, that looks pretty, or I see how I would use that. But when I tap it, what happens? And is it going to feel jittery if I'm doing a scroll on it because I got a smooth scroll? And sometimes that smooth scroll interferes with the user swiping up and they catch it a little bit on that side to side. And that's just a super janky experience. You're looking at a screenshot, you're looking at we see so many folks experimenting with different takes on their header menu, their hamburger menu. And a lot of them you're looking at, oh, this is the right number of menu items, but hey, you just added an implicit gate before somebody gets to more products. So you have to be really thoughtful about that. And what's that going to look like? And how fast is it going to look like? And when they tap on it on a device type that's a little bit shorter than another one, is a set of products going to fall off the bottom edge of the screen? And harder to see things like that and understand things like that. If you're just looking at a couple of screenshots in an idealized world of more common than not, folks are still looking at, Alex, as you said, their desktop environment and they're just making the browser window smaller. And you don't realize, like, oh, that's 10,000 pixels tall. That's probably not what the average device is going to look like. Now I need to be able to generate authentically those 10 different treatments and see them across 10 different devices and get feedback immediately more than I could do as a human. That here's how that's going to look, feel, and interact on those devices. And that's some of that scaling of like, guys, you have a different set of tools than you did in the past, and you need a ton of automation to get the most out of that. And that's what you need to provide a foundation to be able to personalize and iterate at that level.
And
And I
thinking
think
about
that's where a lot of sacrifices I think were made in the past around the better, faster, cheaper. You had to prioritize, you had to, really reduce the number of things that you could go get done as a brand and as a company. I think now that you can serve more and you can do more and you can run more of these experiments, it does open up, the opportunity to tap into different segmentation and experimentation strategies, right? We serve a lot of customers, a lot of big brands and retailers that have many different, customers. They have Gen Z, they have Gen X, they have, boomers. They have customers who require accessibility treatment. All of that optimization for each of those audiences also can be optimized, or you can treat each of those differently. Having a couple of daughters, I can tell you how they shop, very different than how I shop. even on the same mobile device. So I think that's what's opening up now is that you can really start to treat your customers in a very personalized way based on who they are and how you want to treat them across all of these different devices. So,
Yeah. And I think that's really apparent when the generational gap, where if I shop on something and there's certain purchases, I'm like, this is a desktop purchase. I need to get my computer open and I need to purchase it on here. And my sister's like, you're so old. And she's 8 years younger than me, so it makes sense. But
I
there's a
I
generational
get
gap with
that.
that
Like,
shopping.
I am amazed that there are people who can buy airline tickets on a mobile device. I would
Mm.
never, as a Gen X, like, no, that's a desktop purchase. I may be using a phone to call somebody and get no, but
No, that's going
it
too
is,
far.
yeah, there is a huge difference there in usage. And then what do you know about that audience that helps drive that usage? And a lot of times, strong signal is where they come in from.
Yeah.
And that gives you an ability to say, and I think it's a very underutilized ability for that segment, show an authentically different experience. I can't think of many brands that are showing somebody who lands from GPT a different experience than somebody who lands from TikTok. But I think just as much about different technographic and buying patterns between those two audiences as the signal you get between mobile and desktop. Like there's a very, very different first time user from GPT, repeat user who came in because they engaged with something on your mobile app or something on an ad and it's the 10th time they've seen an ad from you. Should be completely different experiences for those users. And even within those populations, show five different treatments to different audiences, get a signal, respond tomorrow.
Mhm. Yeah. And even thinking about the fact that a lot of our customers, a lot of brands are driving traffic to their site from, yes, so from AI search engines, but also things like TikToks and Instagram or wherever they are online. And I don't know about, I don't think the same generational divide is different for those sort of applications because I don't know anyone scrolling TikTok on their desktop computer. That's a mobile only thing. So the
can
experience
you? I don't even know if you can. I mean, that's
I
probably
honestly don't know either, to be honest. I've never tried. It's a mobile only app, but you then click on something, you go to the mobile, and then the amount of times I've done that, gone shopping somewhere, and they have just crap at the top. And it's like the hello bar, but the font is too big, and it's like taking up like a third of the screen. So yeah, it's just not been tested or optimized purely for mobile.
Yeah, it's a real strong signal that you engage with something and you arrived there for a reason. The site or the app knows enough to show you something that is welcoming and authentic to where you arrived from, but it's just not done.
Correct. Right, moving on to our third topic. Adobe just published their Q1 2026 AI traffic report, which said AI traffic in the US retail stores grew 393% year over year. And I had to read that, so I didn't get the number wrong. They said that the traffic is converting 42% better than any other channel, which is paid search, email, social, all of them. So AI is now highest converting source on the internet, but, and then same report, the average retail product page is only 66% readable. So the highest converting traffic, commerce, is showing up on your site, and everything is AI literally can't read it. It can't read your PDPs. So, Ryan, this is your land. What does it actually take to close that 34% machine readability gap on a PDP so that AI can actually read it and it can cite information accurately?
Yeah, there are a few things, and I think the biggest unwinding that folks need to do when they think about their GEO strategy is different from their SEO is realizing that a geo engine values different things and it has different constraints. To this day, most of them, they still aren't going to process and execute JavaScript. And so, if so much of your strong signal about your site is buried in third-party reviews that load up a second after the page loads, most engines are not going to see those. And those are really, really strong signals if you have products that are attested by other shoppers and those are completely invisible to search engines, to AI search, you've lost one of your biggest, most compelling ways to tell that story. And it's easy not to realize how painful that is or how difficult it is to close that gap because we talk to so many brands who've spent the last 10 or 15 years rebuilding their sites to be single page, full JavaScript apps. And there's no telling when ChatGPT is going to get around to processing those and caring. So you have to think about that as one of the most important technical challenges that your brand needs to solve is those reviews you care about, those facts, those sets of information that you've built to educate your customer base, those need to be in the boring old base HTML that your CMS serves up. And so they're forcing us to go back in a lot of ways to basics of how you serve information, both technologically, like you have to make sure the things that tell your story are in the page itself, not something that you slap on through that headless composition of 10 different vendors and sources to pull together an app in the last 5 seconds as it's rendering. Like, that doesn't work. So now you got a big problem that you need to solve there. But also the signals are different. And the reason I mention those attestations, those quotes from other people about those products is in a very, I think, human way, ironically the GEO engines, they're looking for the things that are going to be interesting to a person. When somebody says, I am really interested in, for example, I wanted to buy an external battery for my laptop because sometimes I'm at, as an example, a 2.5 hour long youth baseball game. And sometimes when my son's not batting, I would like to be able to police my agents and make sure they're still busy. So I'm shopping for a battery and I know that I'm going to be served up something that GPT is going to value which ones don't explode and which ones last as long as you want and which ones can power a high-end laptop working full speed. And those are really detailed signals that you wouldn't necessarily get if what you were focused on were the WYSI pixels or the few bits of metadata that Google valued in its really predictable page rankings. You have to say, this is 500 people who gave this an aggregate of 4.7 stars. And they used it in these scenarios, and it really worked out well for them. A geo engine's going to read all of that and say, I want to put this product in front of someone because they're going to convert at that much higher rate. They're going to walk in the door knowing everything they need to know about that product. And if you're a brand who's just putting together a page with some basic metadata and a picture of the product, and that's the only thing that goes in your page, that's why you're not getting that traffic. And the folks who are getting the traffic, their page says, I've got 2,000 words in the page itself about who uses this product, how they use this product. That's the big difference. But it requires for a lot of folks a deep technical dig, and that can be hard, and particularly if you don't realize the scope of the problem. But also marshaling up the right set of information that an AI engine's going to read and say, yeah, I know enough about this thing to recommend it to someone.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that. And I think I think this is like a significant shift. I think we all know that. I think the world knows that. I'm not saying anything new there. But in classic like SEO optimization, you were trying to just get ranked and you're trying to get yourself up on essentially a series of pages that users would scroll through, and no one really went after kind of the first page, but occasionally they did. Now you're trying to get cited in these answer engines, and to be cited, it's a very different game than the SEO game. And so you really need to invest in the content that the answer engine is going to be looking for and the interaction that it's going to be having with the human. So to your point, Ryan, like it's looking for answers to questions that a human may ask. So in that LLM and in that chatbot, I'm looking for running shoes. I'm starting, I'm going to be training for a marathon. I've just begun running again, and I'm in a certain age group. what's the right running shoe, and then I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions back and forth with the LLM or of choice, and then it's going to serve up and it's going to cite potential recommendations, and then from there it gets somebody over to a site to purchase. And I don't think we're there yet where you're going to be purchasing in the LLM, but certainly I think there's kind of changes coming. So to your point, Ryan, I think it puts a lot of focus on making sure that the great raw data that's needed for humans to answer their questions is there for the LLMs to read. And so that means you need to make sure that it's there, that it's factual, that it's structured clearly, and it's on the page. That's for the LLM. When the human shows up, on your site to interact with that product and go a little bit deeper, now you need to optimize for the human. And I think that's where the experience comes to bear. And that's what we talked about earlier. So,
Yeah, and I
uh,
think that's like we know that's a higher converting audience because they already did their discovery. They showed up because they're
yeah,
convinced now to buy this product. Like,
yeah,
show them the add to cart button. Like, absolutely show them more information, but they've done a huge amount of discovery before you get
that's
there.
right.
And I think the point about traditional SEO, there was always that hope, hey, even if we're the fifth or sixth item on that page, somebody's going to see us. There is no sixth answer. A lot of times when that person's having
No.
an LLM conversation, there's no second page of results. If you aren't there, you have been completely filtered out and you may as well not exist. And it takes a lot of deliberate work on a consumer's part to force your results to show up. So, as example, as I was doing my shopping and buying a battery, I wanted to buy it from a specific retailer that I won't mention because they are not currently customers. And I had to yell at GP, like, no, I want a link from these people because I tend to buy from those people. I had to force it to. And so the extent to which GPT or
Yeah.
other engines act as a completely opaque filter in front of your shoppers cannot be overstated. If you don't show up there, or if you don't know you're not showing up there, that's why those high converting people aren't winding up on your site.
Yeah, it's going to take the laziest route to give you the answer that you're seeking, right? And if it's just not there and it's not indexed and cited, then it's not going to be able to surface it. It's very different than like a Google search. So yeah, I think we all know that this is an area where brands and retailers, you have to invest in your site, you have to invest in your content, and we're doing a lot of great work there. One thing I wanted to like go back to like this the stats that you shared, Alex. Um, these are still small numbers today. So the traffic from AI LLMs to a site is still low, but it's converting at a higher rate. And I think that's the key point, right? It's an intent-based signal to your point, Ryan. So when that visitor shows up, right, you want to serve that customer, you want to get that transaction done, and you want to expand the cart. You want to bring some other products to bear that customer may be interested in. So it is a higher converting and a higher intent traffic stream, but it is still one of the lower volumes today for most of our customers. But it's rising, so we all have to start investing now.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
for a lot of folks who are just sort of waking up to the opportunity here and also the challenge, I think a lot of folks are scared that, hey, I do see a huge amount of traffic decreasing from Google, and that's because Google is still very much split-brained on how it wants to approach SEO versus geo, and they're cannibalizing some of that traffic with their geo rankings. And I think there is a lot of, I think, well-founded fear, but at the same time, like this is early innings in
Yeah.
this. So you have plenty of opportunity to capitalize on a year from now, 2 years from now, where you have a threshold that will be crossed, where more people are coming in from geo search than coming in from traditional SEO. And that is coming soon. And it sort of looks like this, where you start from that low threshold and there's exponential growth. Because this would be, I mean, I'm never going to go back to doing a standard search. I love being informed about the products before I mean, I can do that discovery in a way that is a lot more efficient than going to look at 10 different sites and reading the reviews and trying to decide which one I want.
Mhm. And it feels personalized to you, so why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an example, and you can cut this one. This was just funny to me. I was like, hey, I want a reliable battery for this use case. And for some reason, GPT interpreted that as, you're making the conservative choice. And so I would suggest this one because it's less likely to catch on fire. I'm like, was there ever a world where you were like, hey, that's like the edgy hipster choice is the one that has a 5% chance of catching on fire? But it was almost like, well, since you're a nerd, I'll give you the one that doesn't blow up. I was like, really? Like, that's how you're going to interpret me saying I want reliability, like less likely to catch on fire. But that's the level of sort of intent that they're trying to draw out. Like, you don't like fires, so we'll give you a product that doesn't catch on fire. Fair enough.
Fair. Okay, very last topic. Right now we're in this honeymoon phase of AI where every vendor is shipping an agent and every team is plugging them in. The agents for content, agents for testing, personalization, merchandising, support, etc., etc. And nobody is asking the question, what happens when you have 47 of them? Because that's where this is going to end in about 18 months from now. The conversation isn't going to be how do I get more AI in my stack? It's going to be how the hell do I manage the AI in my stack? So we're heading into pure chaos. Well, maybe not pure chaos, but still chaos all the same. And the next phase isn't going to be autonomous AI, it's the realization that autonomous AI without orchestration is unmanageable. Every CMO is going to wake up next year in 2027 with 50 AI agents and no idea what they did last week. And that's not autonomy, it's a liability. So, Ryan, something that you have said multiple times in the chat we've had today, whether that's about sitting at your son's baseball game, managing AI agents, or I can't remember. You said something else earlier on as well that made me think, this is going to tee up the conversation later on perfectly. What is your take on how this is going to go and how managing that many agents is going to be possible?
Yeah, I think we're in a pendulum swing moment, and I'm for it right now. I think we're swinging as both vendors, but also consumers of AI, swinging from that early, say, year and a half after ChatGPT came out, swinging from this belief that all you have to do is slap a chat prompt into the UI and users will be able to figure out how to interact with it and get a ton of value. We've switched to much more contextual embedded agents that know how to do a job and know how to help you in that bit of your ecosystem that maybe isn't your specialty. I need an agent for ADA. I need an agent to help me understand these personalization results. I do think it is heading towards a very difficult to manage type of shadow IT where every member of the team maybe has three or four or five agents that they've become very reliant on, and they're looking for help in those areas, but maybe they're not sharing the learnings from those agents. Maybe John, you and I use different agents for different, how do we help customers? How do we learn about what's going on in the ecosystem? But if yours and I aren't learning and contributing to the same set of knowledge, we're relearning. Or maybe we're talking to our customers in a different way. Maybe we've wound up slowly over time accreting a different brand voice, and that's not great. And maybe we've wound up not just paying for more agents, but winding up with them being very divergent in how they're going to provide guidance and how they're going to provide help. I think there is a need, and this is going to be evolving over the next year as people realize how critical it is. How are you benefiting from those column thousands of virtual employees that you now have in your organization, no matter what size it is? How do you bring them together, not just to have visibility into what they're doing for, right, there's liability concern there, and what advice are we getting from them, but also to make them that much more powerful, to make them that much more informed, to have them learn from a conversation you have with a customer today, John, that I don't know about. But the moment that becomes part of our shared knowledge in that shared base on which all of our agents operate, the more powerful we get. So I think it will be both an untapped opportunity if folks don't figure out how to bring together all of that knowledge and learning and conversation with those agents, but also liability and scale and cost risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, well, I mean, we've seen this with every like wave of technology, have we not, right? Where you get to a point where you need to really start to give some thought to the orchestration, to the security, to compliance, to rules, to all of that. And I think that's where we're building towards with Workspace is that, you're going to have potentially hundreds or thousands of agents working for you as a brand or retailer, and you're going to want to have some oversight to that. You're going to have some security wrapped around that. And I think you're going to need, kind of some connective tissue versus hundreds or thousands of agents just off autonomously working on things. That brings a lot of risk for large companies, brings a lot of opportunity if you build the right agents and you set them off with the right goals and in the right direction. So it's exciting. I think everyone is building some interesting value around this agent ecosystem. And we absolutely believe that this is going to be a time where you're going to want to connect those agents. You're going to want to have some kind of, security around that and a workspace environment, that gives you visibility to even just what they're working on, right? Some oversight into the agents, is super, super important. What did my agent do yesterday? What did my agent do this week? What did it produce? What is it seeing? You're going to need um, as a brand, as a retailer, and even just, as a software company, you're going to want to really get some oversight on that. So we're excited about what we're doing with the workspace, getting great feedback from our customers on the agents within and, how things are surfaced through there. So it's exciting.
Yeah. The future being one workspace that kind of manages all the chaos of multiple agents, and having all the systems connected into like one hub.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of talk around autonomous, maybe just to hit on that as like the last point. Um, you're still, if you're running a business of any scale and you have agents that have agency over revenue, expenses, budget, right? You're going to continue to want to have some human strategy wrapped around that, right? Some human in the loop, right? Someone overseeing anything that's going to impact your revenue, your expenses, your budgets, your token costs, and on and on and on. You're not going to want to give full autonomy to agents to just go continue to work on a goal and then come back and find, your token costs increased or they did something autonomously that didn't match the strategy completely. So I think we're still in an era where having humans working with the agents is super, super important. So,
Yeah, or they decided that what the ChatGPT audience really needed was a special coupon offer, and they
yeah,
hallucinated a coupon code that doesn't exist. And that's happened for folks. And there are going to be those risks.
yeah,
Bubbling it all up, though, so that one human can see what matters across the actions every day of thousands of agents. I mean, that's a human enablement problem, but the truth is that also benefits the agents themselves. If every agent that's working in maybe a different domain of the problem can always be informed about like, what have conversion rates look like since yesterday? And what are we seeing from this one audience? And if there was an accessibility issue that was discovered by one agent, that may be necessary for 10 other agents to take action on. And so it's beneficial both for the oversight you would need as a human and the oversight that you would ask for from the 10,000, however many agents are operating in your ecosystem.
Okay. I think we're going to wrap up there because it's supposed to be 30-minute chat and it's gone an hour. Pretty standard for us, I think, at this point. But yeah, thank you very much for the conversation today. And we'll reconvene in a couple of weeks.
all
Thank
right.
you. Yeah, always happy to talk about AI and where we are in this moment.
So love
Thanks,
that.
Alex.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ryan.
Bye.
Yeah.
See
See
ya.
you.